Um, on a computer that recognizes its environment, right, you would see a mathematical matrix map. Um, and it's recognizing certain objects but not others. So, for example, it's recognizing objects that are so big that they could damage the craft, but not recognizing objects small enough, like dust or smaller rocks, that wouldn't damage the craft, and therefore they're made as sturdy as possible, so they can move faster. On the computer, an object it wants to recognize is the even to odd number. No, sorry, I got it wrong. The odd to even number is an object it wants to recognize, and even to odd number object it wants to recognize. No, I'll try to get this right way around. Hang on. I'll get it the right way around. It's hang on. Give me a minute. Odd to even. Hang on. Odd to even is I've got one mental block. Hang on. Even to odd. I've written it down somewhere. Even to odd number even to odd number give me a minute. Even to odd number object doesn't want to recognize. Odd to even number object it wants to recognize. Yes, that's right. And this is to do obviously with map references. So obviously the computer can see, can't it? So it can see outside the craft. So you've got a computer that can see. Well, with AI, basically this needs an imitation of the human eye, but this will work with a robot as well. It's not an AI computer. Okay, you wouldn't put a living being in something like that. It's not going to have quality of life. You don't need it anyhow. No, it's a robot, but it has the emulation of the human eye, so it can see. It has to be able to see. But what it sees is told to it by the computer. So this is to do with, I mean, it had in the Matrix and said, you're dreaming, right? I mean, it's a theory, but it's not a very good one, but I'll put it to you. You're dreaming, and therefore what you see is real. What you physically see is real. And it really, well, it kind of works like that, but I really don't go with it, because real is real, but in outer space this does work. Therefore, what this particular computer eye sees is what's there, right? According to the craft, and it's just how it works. Therefore, when you're looking at this thing, which is like a mathematical matrix, and how the matrix works, the mathematical matrix map works, is obviously to do with map coordinates, the same way you do an ordinary map. So it needs to be a known area of space, and it needs to be mapped correctly. And then, obviously, it would be recognizing anything large enough to damage a craft. And it would be recognizing its destination, and therefore it will plot its course. Same way you would plot a course on an aeroplane, automatic course. It will plot an automatic course, but you do have manual. Obviously, you get the hang of spotting something that's big enough to damage the aircraft. So it's something to do with, I don't know how the difference between the automatic course and the manual works. Obviously, you've got a screen where you drive. It is something to do with you are semi-automatic all the time because it is bearing you away or bearing you in different directions according to any large object that may damage it. So you're always on semi-automatic because you're moving it so fast. So it's sort of always on semi-automatic. I mean, to go into light speed, you do have to be on automatic. You know, when you see in Star Wars and they pull the lever back, you do have to be on automatic there because it will set an automatic course. If you're moving too fast here to be able to drive yourself, and therefore you plot course A to B and light speed to it, and you're on automatic. When you're driving it yourself, you at whatever speed you're at, on automatic, on semi-automatic, because it is still bearing you away from those objects. So you're not making a straight course throughout space. Alright, you're moving around a bit. You're not moving in a straight line. I'll try and tell you as much as possible. I mean, we talked about the large object and that magnetic field that compresses and gets rid of the matter. It actually opens a hole in the wormhole because that matter, that little bit of dust, is actually the wall of the wormhole. So when they compress it until it's so hard that it disappears, it ends up somewhere else. Right? They've opened a hole. Right? And obviously at that stage, the computer's recognising that matter. But now you're beginning to think, hang on, that's fairly easy because it's just the difference between the odd to even number and even to odd number, whether it's recognising matter or not. So that's easily done on the computer. You switch from one mode to the other. Right, braking. Much easier on a larger craft to brake than it is. You wouldn't have thought it was the other way around, but it's not. It's much easier on a larger craft to brake than it is on a small craft. And once you're in an atmosphere, nowhere will the computer recognise matter isn't there. Right? So once you're in an atmosphere, you are hitting the dust and you need a heat shield at the front as you hit the dust, and it builds up heat on the front of the craft. So you need a heat shield for when it enters the planet's atmosphere. Braking is harder. It's harder. It's much more effective in a larger craft. Smaller craft, you have to brake well in advance of the planet, or when you need to brake well in advance of a smaller craft. There are machines at the back of the craft, which are similar to the way an airplane brakes. But it's a bit more to it than that. I know it's to do with the star mirrors and the differences in relative time. And there is a computer there, another computer which is at the back of the craft, which recognises the difference in relative time that the star mirrors are at. So it uses time to brake. I think it's something to do with it's moving through different time frames. And this is why it's called string theory. It's almost like the time is strings at the back of the craft. That's how it's explained to me. It's like time is strings at the back of the craft, breaking it, pulling it back. So it lashes on to a star backwards in relative time. Registers. So it's to do with time measurements, wasn't it? It was to do with time measurements. Relative time measurements. I mean, the wormholes themselves are rivers of relative time. So it's not as simple as a wormhole will take you to the nearest living planet. Although, if it was a dead body in outer space, that's what would happen. It would take the soul structure to... The body itself would break down in outer space. It would break down the wormhole. But the soul structure would turn into, very small, almost invisible thing, and be taken to the nearest living planet. That's what would happen to a dead body. But it's quite different if it's a large craft in there. Because it's to do with different points in space and different points in time. Again, alright? It's harder. It's more complicated. It's to do with different points in space and different points in time. If you were putting them on a graph, you put A, B, C, D, all different points in space, and you would give the exact time calculation there. And it's actually Greenwich Mean Time that's used. And there you have your graph, right? Star A is at 9 o'clock in the morning in 2012, right? And star B is at 10 o'clock in the evening in 3007, right? Okay, you've plot this around that. And then, you've got your strings, right? This is how it's explained to me, as simply as possible. You've got your strings, right? The star that it latches onto, star timescale, that the computer latches onto, and then it recognises in that timescale, it starts to slow down. You have to now run this, everything I told you, through Stephen Hawking's string theory. The rest is in there. You've recognised the star, which is in the past, right? And lash onto all those stars with strings, right? Pull in the spacecraft back, which now believes it's in the past, right? So you've got one at the front, which has a special type of arm, right? You've got one at the back, which's got a special type of perception of time. It's able to perceive time and believe. So it's like computer, right? They're robots, all right? They're robots. No point in using AI. It's not quality of life. Nobody let you put AI in. They are robots, right? But they believe things. It's to do with belief. You have no idea the power of belief. These robots, these computers, believe things, right? You have no idea of the power of belief, right? They are computers that believe things. What they believe is what they perceive and what they see, right? Like we do. And believe that it's real. It becomes real because they believe it. Right? That's how it works. As soon as we could not unbelieve our environment, nowhere can this computer unbelieve that what it's seeing is not what it's seeing. Because it's a robot. Because the computer is a robot. And whatever you do, experiment with it. You won't make it any different, and you'd get any amount of people coming onto you that is not quality of life for a living being to sit at the back of the spacecraft. And you'd probably fuck with them as well. God's sake, don't go there. No. As I said, the computer, the robot, completely believes what it sees. And at the back of the vehicle, it completely believes what it perceives. Like this one doesn't have an eye. This one doesn't have an eye. I'm trying to remember how it perceives time. Oh God, that's a really hard bit. How to understand how this particular robot at the back of the craft perceives time. Well, obviously you can't use an eye for time. I think it's actually to do with the human brain, this one. I remember how I figured it out. The psychiatrists figure out what part of our brain perceives time. And by then they had AI, right? And they figured out and isolated the circuit that perceives time, right? Turned it into an electrical circuit, right? Put it in a computer and a robot. Therefore, this element perceives time, right? And then it fed from the front computer the matrix map where it says star B is at that time, at a past point, right? And this enables the vehicle to brake. The things that are like, the way that they use the same things that airplanes use to slow down, something very similar. It's not enough, right? It's nowhere near enough to brake from light speed or similar speeds in outer space. You do need this machine. Alright, it's very, very hard to develop. And it's much harder to develop than the acceleration in the first place. Okay? Honestly now I told you as much as I can remember. Okay?